Hey everyone and welcome! Tonight, we begin a journey back in time to the history of the Mongol Empire. So, find a quiet spot, dim the lights, and maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let's imagine ourselves standing on a boundless plain. The horizon stretches out in every direction, a perfect silver line where the land and sky meet in silence. There are no walls here, no roads, no cities. Only the open steppe, rolling endlessly beneath the cold light of dawn. This was the world of the Mongols, the horse-born people who, in the 13th century, built the largest land empire the world has ever known. Their story is one of vast distances, of incredible patience and endurance, of a quiet strength shaped by hardship. In this journey, we're going to move slowly through that world. We'll wake inside a felt-covered yurt where smoke drifts lazily through a hole in the roof. We will meet a rising leader whose name would echo through the centuries, Genghis Khan. We will wander the ruins of lost Mongol cities, where sand and silence have replaced the thundering sound of hooves. And finally, we will sit beneath the Khan's banners, where power was wielded with an almost sacred restraint. So take a slow, deep breath, and let the wind of the steppe fill your imagination. The fire crackles softly beside you, and the horses shift and stir just outside. We begin as every Mongol day began with the dawn. The night has passed quietly. Outside, the land lies flat and pale beneath the first wash of morning light. From within the yurt, a round tent made of felt and willow, the air is warm and faintly smoky. You can imagine yourself lying on a thick mat of woven wool. The scent of horsehair, leather, and smoke hangs in the air. Near the door flap, a kettle of salted milk tea simmers gently over a small fire. It's a calm, simple morning one that has changed very little for centuries. The Mongols of the 13th century were nomads. Their homes could be dismantled in less than an hour, loaded onto ox-drawn carts, and rebuilt on a new pasture before nightfall. Their lives followed the rhythm of the seasons, and above all, the needs of their herds. Horses, sheep, goats, and camels, these animals were both their livelihood and their lifeblood. Each family lived within a small circle of yurts, their entrances always facing south, toward the sun and the open land. The northern side of the yurt was sacred, reserved for household shrines, family heirlooms, and, in wealthier families, the carved saddle of a prized horse. There was a quiet discipline in this way of life. Even the youngest children learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk. A boy might be trusted with a small herd by the age of 7. A girl would learn to tend the fire, milk the marais, and weave felt for the walls of the family home. Every movement, every habit, was shaped by survival in a place where the sky was vast and mercy was rare. Listen now to the soft sounds of the camp awakening, the flap of felt in the wind, the muted whinny of horses as they're led out to graze, the gentle creak of leather harnesses. Someone begins to sing a low, rhythmic tune, not loud enough to carry far, but enough to mark the start of the day. The Mongols had no clocks. Time was measured by the sun, by the migration of birds, by the birth and fattening of their animals. When the grass grew tall, they knew it was time to move. When the rivers froze solid, they built their fires closer together. They didn't build walls or palaces. Their strength was in their movement, the ability to live lightly upon the land, to travel hundreds of miles without leaving a trace. To outsiders, their world seemed barren, even bleak. But to the Mongols, the steppe was alive, filled with the hum of insects, the shimmer of heat over dry grass, and the steady breath of their herds. Imagine stepping outside the yurt now. The air is cold, but clean and sharp. Your breath turns to mist as you watch the horizon burn a pale gold. In the distance, you can see riders already moving, small figures silhouetted against the rising sun. Each horse leaves a long trail of dust, quickly carried away by the wind. Breakfast is simple, dried curd softened in hot tea, maybe a little butter, or the thin fermented marais milk known as arag. The taste is tangy, unfamiliar, yet strangely comforting. It is said that a Mongol could survive for weeks with nothing more than this tea. Milk and arag sustained by pure endurance and habit. Daily life was communal, but also deeply personal. Each family had its own duties, its own place within the larger clan. Elders offered guidance and settled disputes. And women held considerable authority, especially when the men rode off to war. Many travelers remarked on the relative equality of Mongol women. They could own property, speak their minds in council, and even command troops if needed. To the Mongols, Balance was natural, not a matter for debate, but a matter of necessity. When the herds had grazed enough, the camp would move again. Every single object had its place in this great migration. The hearthstones were gathered carefully, to be laid again in the exact same pattern at the next site. Even the youngest children knew which poles belonged to their family's yurt and how to lash the frame together with cords of hair. For the Mongols, home wasn't a fixed place. It was a circle of warmth that moved with them, a world enclosed by felt, surrounded by the endless open air. Now, picture the long afternoon that follows. The horizon shimmers with heat. Far away, the sound of hooves grows faint. Herders whistle softly to their animals, while others mend harnesses or weave rope. Time moves slowly here, almost without sound. At night, the yurt glows faintly from the fire within. The stars above are sharp and endless in the dark sky. Somewhere up there, constellations are forming, the very same stars that once guided Mongol armies across half the world. But tonight, there is no battle, no empire. Only the slow breath of the plains and the steady, ancient rhythm of a people who have learned to live with the wind. The sound of hooves fades into a hush of wind and distant memory. You might imagine the endless horizon again. The same steppe we left behind, but now, somewhere out there, a young man rides alone. His name is Temujin. He is not yet the conqueror history will remember as Genghis Khan. For now, he is simply a wanderer, the son of a fallen family, moving through a landscape of hunger and cold. Temujin was born sometime around the year 1162, near the upper reaches of the Onan River. The world he entered was harsh and uncertain. Clans feuded, alliances shifted with the seasons, and survival depended on loyalty and luck. Imagine the wind pressing against a small felt tent. Inside, a young mother hums softly, wrapping her newborn son in furs. Outside, the land is frozen and vast. There are no walls, no armies, only the sound of snow and the slow breathing of horses. When Temujin was still a child, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe. His family was abandoned, left to fend for themselves on the steppe. They scavenged roots, hunted small animals, and endured long winters alone. It was in this quiet, relentless struggle that Temujin learned endurance, the discipline of waiting, the patience of survival. Many later stories about him would grow into legend. That he carried an iron spirit, that he never forgot those who betrayed him, that his silence could be as commanding as his voice. But before the myths, there was simply a boy walking across the plains, watching the sky change, planning, always planning. The Mongols of the steppe lived in shifting alliances of tribes. Each clan had its own chief, its own loyalties. For Temujin, power came not from inheritance, but from gathering trust, one friendship, one oath at a time. You can imagine him, years later, sitting beside a fire at night, the flame flickering across his face as he listens, always listens to the men around him. He speaks quietly, promising fairness, protection, reward. He asks for loyalty not through fear, but through certainty. Slowly, his circle grows. First a handful of followers, then hundreds, then thousands. By the time he is a man, his name carries weight across the steppe. One of his earliest reforms was simple but powerful. He abolished the old tribal divisions that had caused endless bloodshed. Instead, he created a new order built not on birth, but on merit. Every man, from the humblest herder to the proudest noble, would rise or fall by his service to the Khan. In a world shaped by lineage, this was revolutionary, and it worked. The tribes that once fought endlessly began to unite under one banner, the banner of Temujin. In the year 1206, the tribes gathered on the banks of the Onan River. A vast assembly, horsemen, chieftains, elders, all came to proclaim him their leader. The title they gave him was Genghis Khan, which may have meant universal ruler. Imagine that moment, the great plain alive with the sound of hooves and wind, the sky clear and bright, the air filled with the scent of trampled grass and smoke. There was no throne, no marble hall, only the earth beneath his boots and the sky above his head. His empire began there, not in stone, but in promise. Power alone was not enough. To hold his new nation together, Genghis created a system of law called yasa. Its rules were strict, yet fair. They punished theft, betrayal, and disobedience. They rewarded loyalty, discipline, and courage. One rule stated that no man should ever steal another's horse. Another required that every soldier share food with his comrades. There were even laws about how fires should be built, and how spoils from war should be divided equally. The effect was unity, an empire that moved with one heartbeat. Each rider, each family, each caravan belonged to something larger than themselves. You can almost hear it, the slow, rhythmic beat of hooves across the plains. Thousands moving as one, the creak of leather, the jingle of harnesses. Discipline carried through the wind. To the Mongols, warfare was not chaos, but precision. Every soldier carried a bow of horn and sinew, crafted carefully to bend in cold or heat. They could ride for days, sleeping in their saddles, sustained by dried meat or by a sip of Mare's milk. Their strength was mobility, the same rhythm of movement that had shaped their lives for centuries. They fought with strategy and patience, using decoys, false retreats, and swift encirclement. But to describe the Mongols only as conquerors is to miss their other gift: organization. They built networks of riders who carried messages across the empire, relay stations every few dozen miles so that a command from the Khan could reach the edges of Asia in days. It was a system both simple and astonishing, a beating pulse across continents. As Genghis grew older, his vision expanded. He saw beyond the tribes, beyond even the steppe. He imagined a world united by law, by trade, by a single order. Under his rule, merchants could travel from China to Persia without fear. Envoys were protected by decree. Bridges were built, roads cleared, caravanserais, way stations established. And yet always the steppe remained his center. He never built a capital of stone. His palace was a tent, his court a circle of riders, his throne the saddle beneath him. At night he is said to have walked among his people quietly, listening to their conversations, not as a ruler, but as a herdsman once again. When the wars paused, life returned to its steady rhythm. Children played near the yurts. Women brewed arag. Men tended to horses and repaired bows. Imagine that quiet. The endless steppe bathed in twilight. The faint hum of insects in the grass. The scent of smoke rising from many small fires. The Khan's tent stood among them, unremarkable from the outside. Inside, perhaps a single candle flickered, its light reflecting in the calm eyes of a man who had reshaped half the known world, not with fury, but with patience. History remembers Genghis Khan as a conqueror, but perhaps it is more accurate to think of him as a builder, of systems, of order, of continuity. His world was harsh, but his vision was vast, rooted always in the discipline and silence of the land that raised him. Now imagine centuries later, the empire stretches across mountains, rivers, and deserts. But time moves on and empires, like sand in the wind, begin to fade. In the next part of our journey, we will explore what remains, the traces left beneath the earth, and the silent cities swallowed by dust and memory. The wind quiets. All that's left is the steady rhythm of your breath and the faint, imagined sound of footsteps on sand. We are far from the living steppe, now far from the galloping horses and the voices carried on the wind. Time has moved on. The great Mongol Empire, once thrumming with motion and command, has fallen into stillness. But beneath that silence, traces remain. The earth itself holds a memory faint, buried, and waiting to be found. Imagine standing where a river once curved through open grassland. Today, its bed is dry, the edges scattered with shards of pottery, the faint outline of old walls pressed into the soil. This was once a Mongol city, perhaps even Karakoram, the capital founded by Genghis Khan's son, Gede. Now, Karakoram didn't look like the grand cities of stone and marble known in Europe or the Middle East. It rose from the earth like a mirage, a center of trade and administration that was half nomadic even in its design. Its walls were modest. Its streets were wide, made for horses as much as for people. Temples, markets, and workshops stood right beside traditional tents and open fires. You can almost see it now, a city of wind and movement, where foreign merchants arrived with silk, jade, and spices, and left with wool, gold, and iron. For a few short decades in the 13th century, Karakoram was the beating heart of a world empire. From here, edicts were written, routes were mapped, and envoys from distant lands bowed before the great Khan. But eventually, as the empire stretched and shifted, the capital itself was left behind, a city outgrown by its own vastness, fading quietly back into the soil. Centuries later, archaeologists came to the steppe, seeking traces of this vanished world. They followed ancient maps, studied travelers' writings, and sifted carefully through layers of dust and grass. What they found wasn't grandeur, but detail. The charred remains of hearts, The fragments of glazed pottery, imported from as far away as China and Persia. Bronze seals bearing the marks of Mongol administrators. The foundations of workshops where artisans once cast iron and gold. Each discovery whispered of a people who were not only conquerors, but also organizers, engineers, and craftsmen. In one dig, researchers found a fragment of silk, still intact. Its threads were faded, but it was recognizably woven by human hands nearly 8 centuries ago. It might have been traded along the Silk Road, carried by camel caravans that stretched for thousands of miles. There's a kind of peace in these discoveries, not the noise of victory, but the quiet endurance of memory. But Karakorum wasn't the only center of power. The Mongol Empire built many, some grand, others temporary, like resting breaths between campaigns. One of the most remarkable was Karakoya, an ancient oasis city revived under Mongol rule. Another was Sarai, the capital of the Golden Horde, located near the mighty Volga River. By medieval standards, Sarai was vast. It had mosques, bustling markets, and caravanserais resting places for travelers and their goods. Chroniclers described it as a city where dozens of languages mingled in the air. Even the faintest breeze might have carried the scent of spices, the murmur of trade, and the whinny of horses. But like all empires, the Mongol dominion eventually fractured. New rulers emerged, borders shifted, and even rivers changed their course. Sarai too fell silent. The Volga kept flowing, but its banks slowly reclaimed the stones that once marked the heart of an empire. When archaeologists unearthed the site, they found fragments of ceramic bowls, coins stamped with Mongol script, and pieces of fine glass imported from faraway lands. Each fragment was a whisper not of conquest, but of connection. Even in its decline, the empire's network of trade and communication endured. Historians call this period the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. For nearly a century, roads and a sophisticated postal system linked the corners of Eurasia. A merchant could travel from the Black Sea all the way to Beijing under the same law, protected by the same decree. Imagine those roads now, long ribbons of packed earth winding through deserts and mountains. At regular intervals, small outposts with fresh horses stood ready, guarded by riders in fur-lined cloaks. The sound of hoofbeats echoed softly into the dusk. It was one of the first truly global systems, a bridge between worlds. Paper, gunpowder, and silk moved westward. Glassware, medicine, and new ideas moved east. And with them traveled stories, carried by merchants, monks, and wanderers. When the empire dissolved, these roots didn't just vanish. They simply changed hands. The world remained more connected than before, its rhythms subtly altered by the echoes of Mongol hoofbeats. Today, if you travel to the Orkhan Valley in Mongolia, where Karakorum once stood, you will find wide plains, open sky, and the faint remains of ancient walls. There is little to disturb the silence except the wind moving through the grass. A few stones, low and rounded by time, trace the outlines of long-lost streets. Some travelers say that when the wind is just right, it seems to carry the distant sound of horses as if the memory of the past has not quite faded away. At the edge of the valley stands the Erdene Zu Monastery, built in the 16th century with stones taken from the ruins of Karakorum. Within its walls, monks still chant softly in the morning, their voices rising and falling in the same rhythm that once belonged to the riders of the steppe. Here, history folds quietly upon itself, an echo of empires past, a meditation in stone and wind. Empires are like the seasons. They grow, they flourish, and eventually, they yield to silence. The Mongols, who built the largest contiguous land empire the world has ever seen, seem to understand this more than most. Their homes could be dismantled and rebuilt. Their herds wandered with the grass. Even their capital, magnificent in its time, could be left behind without regret. Perhaps that is the secret of their endurance, a willingness to move on, to let the world change, to accept impermanence not as a loss, but as a natural rhythm. Imagine yourself standing once more on that open plain. The air is cool and still. The earth beneath your feet feels ancient, yet somehow alive. All around you is space endless, gentle and unbroken. The empire is gone. The cities are dust. But the wind still carries their stories. In the distance, a line of tents glimmers under the moonlight. Their banners flutter faintly. Voices murmur from within. Next time we will step into one of those tents to the Khan's court itself, where power was quiet and decisions that shaped continents were made in calm deliberation, all beneath the endless sky. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more hidden histories, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us continue to bring these stories to life. See you next time. The night deepens across the steppe. The fires outside the encampment burn low, their smoke curling lazily toward a wide starlit sky. From a distance, the Mongol court looks almost like a mirage, a cluster of great felt tents, each illuminated softly from within, their circular forms glowing faintly against the dark horizon. This is not a palace of stone, nor a city of walls. It is a court that moves with the wind. The Orju Khan's traveling camp was the beating heart of the Mongol Empire, as fluid and adaptable as the people who built it. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the muffled rhythm of the place, the quiet murmur of guards exchanging words, the gentle snort of horses tethered outside, the low chant of distant prayers. And at the very center, the silence of authority, steady, watchful, absolute. The court of the great Khan was unlike any royal court in Europe or Asia. It had no throne room of marble, no towering pillars or golden domes. Instead, the center of power was a single vast tent, the Golden Gear. Imagine stepping inside. The air is thick with the scent of wool, smoke, and incense. The floor is covered with fine carpets and felt mats. At the far end, raised slightly above the rest, sits the Khan's seat, a low platform draped with silks, simple yet commanding. Around him, ministers, generals, and envoys kneel in respectful silence. Each has traveled far, perhaps across entire continents, to seek favor, to deliver tribute, or to negotiate peace. No one speaks unless spoken to. And when the Khan does speak, his words are measured and calm, each syllable carrying the weight of an empire. It was said that even when Genghis Khan's descendants ruled the world's largest landmass, they preferred this quiet simplicity, the feel of grass beneath their feet. The open air flowing through the tents seems the reminder that all power like the wind is transient. Behind the Khan's authority stood another kind of strength, that of the women who managed the domestic, political, and even diplomatic life of the court. One of the most remarkable among them was Bert, Genghis Khan's first wife. She held influence over decisions of trade, diplomacy, and inheritance. When the Khan was away on campaign, it was often she who governed in his stead. Later, women such as Chagin Khatun and Sorgateni Beki would rule entire regions, issuing decrees, managing taxation, and corresponding with foreign leaders. Sorgateni, in particular, was known for her wisdom and tolerance. She supported scholars, respected multiple faiths, and raised sons who became rulers across Asia. In a world dominated by male warlords, the Mongol court quietly allowed space for the voices of women, voices that were calm, deliberate, and decisive. You might imagine a night inside the royal tent, a queen writing by candlelight, her ink dark and steady, the distant sound of the wind carrying through the felt walls. Outside, armies wait for orders. Inside, history is shaped in silence. The Khan's court was a crossroads of civilizations. Envoys came from Persia, Russia, China, Korea, and even distant Europe. Each carried gifts, silver goblets, silk banners, carved ivory, or holy relics. They brought with them languages and beliefs that had never before shared the same space. A Franciscan monk named Giovanni de Pian del Carpin visited the court of Gayok Khan in 1246. He described a gathering of nations, unlike anything he had imagined. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, shamans, all under the same roof. When foreign emissaries entered, they were greeted by the silence of the court and audience hall, so still that, as one chronicler said, you could hear the creak of your own heartbeat. They bowed 3 times, offered their gifts, and waited for the Khan's judgment. Sometimes after long pauses, the Khan would simply nod. Sometimes he would ask a single question, his voice soft but precise, cutting through the air like the edge of a blade. This was how empires were maintained, not with shouting, not with spectacle, but with control so complete that even quiet became a form of command. The Mongol court was remarkable in another way. It did not demand religious conformity. Unlike many rulers of its time, the great Khan allowed freedom of worship across his lands. Imagine walking through the encampment on a still morning. At one end, Buddhist monks chant softly before sunrise. Nearby, a Nestorian Christian priest prepares to celebrate Mass. Elsewhere, a Muslim imam kneels in prayer as the sky brightens to pale gold. The air is filled not with discord, but with a quiet harmony, a recognition that the vastness of the world held space for many faiths. The Khans often consulted priests and shamans alike. They sought wisdom wherever it might be found, believing that the divine could speak through anyone, through the wind, through the stars, through the whisper of a counselor in the still of night. Beyond the rituals and audiences, the court functioned as the center of an immense administrative network. Scribes worked by lamplight, their brushes gliding steadily across scrolls. Messengers came and went, carrying sealed orders to the farthest corners of the empire. Tax collectors, translators, merchants all moved quietly through the camp, each contributing to a system so organized that it astonished even seasoned diplomats. It was said that a letter could travel from Karakorum to Persia in a matter of weeks passed from rider to rider, each one pausing only long enough to rest his horse before galloping onward. Even in this, there was rhythm, the hum of writing, the flicker of lamps, the shuffle of parchment. Beneath the banners of the Khan, empire became a living machine powered by precision and discipline. At the center of the camp stood the Sald, the sacred banner of the Mongols. It was made of white horsehair bound to a wooden staff and crowned with iron rings that chimed softly in the breeze. To the Mongols, it symbolized not only the spirit of their ancestors, but also the unity of the nation. When the Khan's army marched, the Sald went before them. When the court gathered, it stood beside his tent, its strands moving gently in the wind, a constant reminder that power was not in gold or stone, but in the living breath of the people and the land. Even today, some Mongolian families keep a smaller version of this banner in their homes, believing it carries protection, luck, and the voice of history. As the night deepens around the Khan's court, the fires burn lower. Servants move quietly through the camp, checking the horses, folding blankets, sealing scrolls. Inside the Golden Gear, the Khan sits in silence, his eyes on the horizon where dawn will soon appear. He knows that even his power will one day pass, that the empire, vast as it is, cannot outlast time. Yet he also knows that its rhythm, its order, its connection will echo through centuries. Outside, the wind moves through the banners. The horses breathe softly, and the sky begins, just faintly, to pale. Now the story of the Khan's empire draws to a gentle close. From the cold mornings in the yurts, to the rise of a conqueror, to the buried cities and the whispers of his court, we have traveled through centuries carried on the same quiet wind. But before we leave this world behind, let us drift for a while longer to reflect on what remains, and to let the dust of history settle softly in our thoughts. The wind on the steppe has slowed now. The fires that once flickered across the vast encampments are no more than faint embers, their warmth fading into the cool breath of the night. As we come to the end of this long journey, you might imagine yourself resting beneath that same endless sky, the same one that once looked down upon horsemen, upon traders, upon emperors. There is a stillness here now, the kind of stillness that hums softly, like the echo of something vast and far away. The Mongol Empire, the largest land empire ever to exist, has long dissolved into history. But its traces remain, in the roots that shaped continents, in the mingling of peoples and ideas, and in the quiet resilience of the land where it was born. If you close your eyes, you might picture it, the grass bending gently under the night wind, the scent of dry earth and distant rain. Somewhere a shepherd's voice carries on the air, softly humming an old tune whose words no one quite remembers. It is a melody older than maps, older even than kings. The Mongols once believed that the earth itself carried memory, that every hoofbeat, every step, left an imprint that could be felt long after the sound was gone. And so the steppe, vast and unbroken, became a living archive. Each gust of wind stirred a fragment of the past, the laughter of children chasing horses, the whisper of soldiers sharing tea before a march, the quiet, steady heartbeat of an empire in motion. History often tells the story of the Mongols in noise, the thunder of hooves, the clash of battle, the roar of conquest. But when we listen closely, beneath all that sound, what remains is silence. Not emptiness, but calm. It is the silence of people rebuilding their lives after the wars, of farmers returning to their fields, of women spinning wool in the doorways of tents, of the wind moving across open grass. The empire, at its heart, was never just about destruction. It was about movement, the rhythm of life adapting to the rhythm of the earth. Even Genghis Khan, whose name became synonymous with conquest, chose to be buried in secret, somewhere in the folds of the Mongolian hills. No one knows exactly where. The legends say his grave was hidden so well that the grass grew back over it within weeks, leaving no trace of his resting place. It seems a fitting end for a ruler of the open land to return quietly to the soil that shaped him. Centuries passed. The empire's lands were divided, then reshaped, their borders changing again and again. Yet the legacy of that brief age of order and movement continued to ripple through the world. The postal system that connected Asia and Europe inspired later empires. The religious tolerance of the Khans influenced rulers far beyond the steppe. Even the exchange of goods and ideas from paper and gunpowder to art and astronomy helped weave together a world that had once been isolated. It is easy to forget that the Mongols, often remembered as destroyers, were also preservers and connectors builders of a fragile, fleeting unity across vast distances. And so the sound that lingers is not the roar of conquest, but the steady rhythm of motion. The creak of saddles, the soft breathing of horses, the whisper of wind over grass. Now, imagine the steppe once more at twilight. The light has faded to a silver blue. The last clouds drift like sails across the horizon. In the distance, a single tent stands, its felt walls glowing faintly with the light of a small fire inside. You can almost see the shadows moving, a woman stirring a pot. A man tightening a saddle strap, a child curled under blankets, the faint sound of a lullaby rising into the air. This could be any century. The world has changed countless times, but this image endures humans and horses, wind and fire, sleep and silence. Perhaps that is why this story, like the steppe itself, has such a soothing rhythm. Because it reminds us that life in every era moves between work and rest, between motion and stillness, between empire and dust. The Mongols lived by that rhythm, each dawn a new beginning, each sunset a reminder of impermanence. And you too are part of that rhythm now, listening, breathing, letting the sounds of the past fade into the hush of the present moment. Let the last embers of the story dim softly. Let the banners lower and the wind grow still. Let the empire sleep, and with it, let your own mind drift toward rest. Tonight, as you lie beneath your own roof, safe, warm, surrounded by quiet, remember the people who once looked up at the same stars, their lives filled with hardship and endurance, yet bound always by the same simple need, to find peace beneath the open sky. The horses have stilled, the fires have cooled, the banners are folded, and across the steppe, the only sound that remains is the long, slow breathing of the earth itself. As you too can breathe now, letting go of the day. For more stories like this one, I invite you to subscribe and join our journey. Thank you for listening. Sleep well. Imagine yourself stepping into the quiet, circular world of a Mongol yurt at dawn. The first light slips softly through the felt walls, painting everything in a gentle golden haze. The air carries the faint, comforting scent of straw and dried grasses lining the floor for warmth. A small fire smolders in the center, radiating a steady, reassuring heat. You can hear the low murmur of animals outside, the soft nicker of horses, the occasional bleat of a go-to-quiet orchestra that begins the day. Here, women rise early, before the sun fully warms the endless steppe. Their tasks are constant, steady, and purposeful, forming the very backbone of daily life. Imagine moving alongside them, gathering firewood from scattered bundles, feeling the rough texture of dried branches in your hands. You lift clay bowls filled with fresh milk, cool against the morning air, and check on the animals, brushing their soft fur. Every gesture carries a rhythm, deliberate and calm, almost hypnotic in its repetition. The milk is transformed carefully, churned slowly into butter in wooden vessels. You can almost hear the gentle thrum of the churn, the soft sloshing of cream folding upon itself. Grain is sifted and measured, oats and barley pouring quietly into bowls. Imagine the tactile pleasure of running your fingers through the fine grains, the soft clatter of wooden utensils, the subtle aroma of freshly ground flour mingling with the smell of warm milk. Even the smallest tasks are infused with meaning. You might see a woman sitting cross-legged by a loom, the rhythmic back-and-forth motion weaving threads into durable fabrics. Each stitch, each pass of the shuttle, is precise and patient. Nearby, a tunic is mended by hand-tiny, careful stitches sealing the fabric as if it were a secret. The effort is gentle but essential, ensuring the family remains warm and protected against the long, cold winters that sweep across the plains. Children are slowly brought into this world of quiet work. Picture little ones following softly, observing each movement with curiosity and wonder. You can hear the soft guidance in their early lessons letters traced in sand or the gentle recitation of numbers. A quiet melody of knowledge passed from mother to child. Sometimes a lullaby drifts through the yurt, sung to the beat of a small drum or the whisper of wind through the open flap. It's a song that carries both comfort and continuity, a connection between past and present, between generations. Meals are prepared in a rhythm that is equally calming. You can almost feel the warmth of the fire as porridge simmers, the gentle stir of wooden spoons through thick, nourishing grains. The smell of boiled milk, softened by herbs or sweetened with a touch of dried fruit, drifts slowly through the air. Each movement, pounding, stirring, kneading, or folding dough is quiet, deliberate, meditative. Even the act of setting out bowls, washing hands, or serving bread becomes part of the soft, recurring pulse of life on the steppe. The women also maintain the yurt itself. Felt panels are adjusted, ropes tightened, and floors swept with brooms made from reeds or twigs. Every detail matters. Every action ensures that life inside remains comfortable despite the vast open wilderness beyond the walls. You can feel the care in each adjustment, the gentle satisfaction of creating order amidst the endless plains. And yet, despite the constant work, there is no rush. Each action flows seamlessly into the next, a meditation in motion. There is a steady, soothing rhythm to life here, the feeding of animals, the churning of butter, the weaving of threads, the teaching of children. The days blend softly, punctuated only by the sun's slow arc across the sky and the gentle changing of light through the yurt's entrance. Through these quiet routines, the true pulse of the Mongol Empire can be felt. Warriors and horses may dominate the history books, but the empire thrived because of these tireless hands. Their labor ensured survival, continuity, and comfort. As you imagine yourself here, perhaps leaning gently against the felt walls, you begin to notice a subtle music in these motions, the swish of wool, the soft clatter of pottery, the whisper of straw underfoot. It's a melody that mirrors the heartbeat of the steppe itself, steady, calm, and enduring. As evening approaches, the light softens to amber and shadow. Women tend the fires once more, pour warm milk into cups, and gather family members for quiet conversation. The soft laughter of children mingles with the murmur of adults, and outside, the faint silhouettes of grazing animals move slowly in the fading light. Everything here moves at a pace designed not to excite, but to soothe the gentle lull that invites your own mind to relax and drift. Finally, as the yurt settles into night, imagine the calm intimacy of this space, a small protected world of warmth, quiet labor, and care. Life on the Mongol steppe continues to flow steady and soft in endless cycles. And as you close your eyes, the rhythm of work, family, and gentle motion lingers in your mind, a quiet echo of endurance, patience, and serenity that carries you softly towards sleep. Let your mind drift now, beyond the vast landscapes and daily rhythms of the Mongol steppes, into the quieter, more invisible aspects of life. Here, a subtle, continuous thread of spiritual belief wove itself through each and every day. Picture yourself walking slowly across the open plains at dawn. The wind whispers over the grass and dust, carrying with it a sense of the unseen, a connection to forces both gentle and powerful. In every yurt, in every small camp, spiritual rituals quietly guided the flow of life. You might notice a small fire altar at the center of a family's home. Herbs are burned, and the faint, sweet-smelling smoke curls upward in soft spirals, disappearing into the morning light. The scent of burning juniper and wormwood is soothing, grounding, a delicate aroma that lingers in the air. Each wisp of smoke carries with it prayers for protection, for health, and for safe passage across these vast open lands. Shamans, who were quietly respected and often unseen, played an essential, though gentle role in this spiritual landscape. Imagine an elder, a man or a woman, seated cross-legged upon a soft mat, draped in simple robes adorned with beads and leather charms. They don't shout or call for attention. Instead, their presence is calm, commanding respect through quiet ritual rather than a loud voice. Through soft chanting, the delicate ringing of small bells, and subtle rhythmic drumming, they bridge the world of the living with the spirits of nature, of ancestors, and of a vast, endless sky. You can picture the shaman guiding a small ceremony. The sound is low, slow, and soothing, almost like a lullaby. Each motion is deliberate, measured, and meditative. Leaves are placed carefully upon the fire, smoke spirals in controlled swirls, and whispered words echo softly within the yurt. The community watches or listens, absorbing the rhythm of the ritual, feeling a quiet reassurance as the unseen world is acknowledged, respected, and gently invited to coexist with the daily realities of life on the steppe. The nomadic people believed that every mountain, every river, and every plain held a spirit. They believed that animals carried messages, and that their ancestors lingered nearby, guiding and watching over them. Imagine a small herd of horses grazing quietly in the fading light. With each soft breeze, a subtle sense of connection emerges, as if the air itself carries whispers of wisdom from the past. Children, observing with wide, curious eyes, were taught to notice these signs: the rustling of leaves, the sudden flight of a hawk overhead, or the gentle murmur of a stream. These were all reminders that life was not just physical, but deeply spiritual as well. Certain festivals and seasonal rituals marked the passage of time. The lighting of ceremonial fires at the solstices, the quiet offerings made to ancestors during harvests, or the soft blowing of horns across the winter plains, all were slow, gentle practices, never hurried, never overwhelming. Each ritual allowed the mind to pause, to acknowledge the continuity of life, and to rest in a calm, shared rhythm. You can almost feel the gentle warmth of these fires on your skin. The soft hum of voices mingling with the wind, a deep comfort that permeates the senses and quiets the mind. Even in moments of tension, when a distant threat loomed, or when illness swept through a small camp, these spiritual practices offered solace and strength. You can imagine a mother whispering prayers over her sleeping children, the soft smoke curling around her, or a young warrior pausing before a long journey, feeling the invisible presence of guidance and protection. These acts were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they provided a deep, reassuring calm, a sense of quiet order amidst the uncertainty of life. Now, as the sun lowers and the plains are bathed in amber and violet light, imagine the gentle closing of the day. The fires are kept low, the rituals have concluded, and a soft hush drapes over the entire camp. You can hear the distant, steady breathing of animals, the occasional whisper of a flute or a small drum as someone hums a quiet tune to themselves. The spiritual world, though unseen, continues to flow alongside everyday life, a silent companion. A calming presence, a rhythm as natural and steady as the wind over the steppe. As you settle into this serene world, notice how these quiet practices shape the very pace of life itself. They teach patience, attentiveness, and a gentle mindfulness that is rare in our modern world. The shaman's drum, the curling smoke, the whispered words of ancestors, they all combine into a soft, lingering lullaby of history, carrying the mind slowly and soothingly into rest. The steppe, though wide and untamed, feels gentle now, alive with quiet rituals and spiritual currents that have echoed through countless generations. Imagine yourself lying on a soft mat inside a yurt. The last light of day is fading, and the soft chants and hums are fading with it, leaving only the sound of calm, slow breathing, and a profound sense of timeless continuity. Picture yourself stepping into the Khan's grand encampment as twilight drapes the steppe in muted shades of purple and gold. The camp is large, yet not overwhelming. A collection of yurts arranged in a wide circle, their banners fluttering lazily in the breeze. The air is a mix of tallow, polished leather, and the soft, earthy scent of the plains. Each yurt is its own small universe of quiet order. At the very center lies the Khan's yurt, larger than the rest, crowned with carved wooden beams and a roof that opens slightly to the sky, letting in the fading light and the occasional whisper of wind. Step inside. The space feels expansive, yet somehow intimate. Furs and thick rugs line the floor, softening every footstep. Low wooden tables are arranged with care, holding maps, scrolls, and small, elegant vessels of tea and fermented milk. Imagine the gentle clink of cups as attendants move with deliberate grace, their motions slow and precise. Shadows stretch and dance along the walls, shifting with the firelight, creating a soft, rhythmic pulse that mirrors the calm, steady heartbeat of the entire camp. The courtiers, generals, and advisors occupy their places with a quiet, dignified poise. Every gesture, every movement is measured. You can almost hear the soft rustle of silk robes as someone leans forward to whisper a suggestion into a waiting ear. The Khan listens with a serene, unhurried attention, perhaps nodding slowly or tilting his head in deep contemplation. Here, even immense power feels gentle, almost meditative. There is no rush, no harshness, only a deliberate rhythm of observation, reflection, and quiet influence. On the low tables, maps of the empire are stretched out, revealing vast lands, winding rivers, and distant cities. Small pins and carved markers indicate campaigns both past and future. Imagine your fingers tracing the smooth edges of these maps, feeling the aged texture of parchment and ink, and picturing the faraway places they represent. Discussions unfold slowly, voices blending with the soft crackle of the central fire and the occasional, distant tinkle of ceremonial bells. Ideas are considered with great care, strategies are debated in calm, even tones. Every word is deliberate, never hurried, never loud. Outside the central yurt, life moves in soft, coordinated rhythms. You might see attendants adjusting banners against the evening sky, or polishing armor and ceremonial metalwork until it gleams in the firelight. Messengers move quietly between the yurts, carrying letters and decrees. In their enclosures, the horses shift gently, the soft sound of their breath and low whinnies carrying faintly on the wind. Even the faint crunch of footsteps on the packed earth is almost soothing, a constant reminder of movement governed by a calm, unspoken discipline. From time to time, visitors arrive from distant regions, bringing gifts wrapped in delicate silks or encased in ornate wood and leather. Each offering is presented in hushed tones, a careful, silent exchange of respect and diplomacy. Picture a silken pouch opening to reveal tiny, exquisitely carved figures, or a polished bronze vessel catching the firelight, its surface reflecting flickering patterns across the walls. Every action is slow, measured, and comforting in its predictability. You might notice the Khan himself during a quiet moment, sitting cross-legged on a soft rug near the low fire. He listens far more than he speaks, absorbing information in a steady, calming rhythm. His presence is commanding, but not urgent. The power he wields feels as enduring as the endless steppe that surrounds you, vast, patient, and eternal. Every gesture, every word, and every pause is deliberate, inviting you to relax, to observe, and to absorb this gentle flow of authority. As evening deepens, the court settles into even softer routines. Lamps are dimmed, shadows grow longer, and conversations slow to quiet murmurs. The air might fill with the sound of a soft flute, a quiet drum, or the gentle melody of a stringed instrument, accompanying a ceremonial toast or a private reflection. The music is never intrusive. It simply blends with the ambient hum of the camp, the wind whistling over the steppe, the lowing of distant herds, the faint creak of banner poles, a lullaby woven into the very air. Even moments of high ceremony carry this gentle rhythm. The presentation of envoys, the reading of important messages, the arrangement of ceremonial objects, it all unfolds with a soft, deliberate cadence. The Khan's decisions, made in these quiet consultations, reflect a deep and calm order. There is a subtle harmony here between the visible and the invisible, between power and restraint, movement and stillness, guidance and patience. It is a space where every small detail contributes to the larger rhythm of empire, yet the rhythm itself is soothing rather than demanding. As night finally blankets the steppe, the camp quiets further. The fires burn low, their embers casting a warm, steady glow across the rich rugs and furs. The soft, distant sounds of the plains merge with the gentle life inside the yurt. Imagine resting on a plush mat, feeling the comforting warmth of the fire and the soft, reassuring presence of authority all around you. The Khan's court, with its banners, its whispers, and its deliberate rituals, embodies the calm, enduring heartbeat of history. Gentle reminder that even in the vast expanse of an empire, there is quiet order, a steady rhythm, and a deep sense of reassurance. And as you close your eyes, letting the soft hush of the court mingle with the endless whisper of the steppe, the steady pulse of life disciplined, measured, and enduring carries you gently toward rest. The vastness of history folds softly around you like a warm, protective blanket. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey.